May 9. But in a briefing earlier today, Mr. Duterte's spokesperson clarifies this doesn't mean Marcos is automatically the president's anointed one. Our Amor Santos tells us more.
It's the Marcos-Duterte tandem for the ruling PDP Laban faction backed by President Duterte. On Monday, its National Executive Committee signed a resolution supporting the presidential bid of Bongbong Marcos. But is this tantamount to President Duterte's endorsement?
In due time, he will speak. Hindi naman tayo gagawa ng desisyon na magiging lihis sa pananaw din ng ating chairman.
It took the group 2 months to decide since endorsing Marcos' running mate Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte in January. The president previously lambasted Marcos, even calling him a weak leader.
It's only BBM na wala siyang sinabi, walang masamang sinabi kay Pangulong Duterte. In fact, pagkatapos yung mga nasabi sa kanya, he's still willingly saying na itutuloy ko kung ano yung sinimula ni Pangulo.
Of course, we are very, very grateful and are happy to receive this much awaited and much hoped for news. Consolidate the forces of unity.
PDP Laban Vice President for the Visayas, Eastern Samar Governor Ben Evardone did not sign the resolution. He earlier expressed support for Marcos' rival Vice President Leni Robredo, believing Mr. Duterte virtually endorsed her when he said he wanted a compassionate and decisive lawyer as successor. For the ruling party's rival faction, the Kusi Wing's action only shows it's not the legitimate PDP Laban, noting that the party was formed in the 1980s, fighting the Marcos dictatorship.
So how a PDP Laban, which has merged during the time of President Cory Aquino, can now support the candidacy of their founding fathers' nemesis is beyond any principled choice.
We are moving forward kasi pagka lagi yung the past ang aming inisip at we live by the past, ay walang mangyayari sa atin.
Its founding fathers established the party to oppose then-President Ferdinand Marcos. Decades later, PDP Laban, at least for one of its factions, now finds itself supporting the dictator's son. Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
Meanwhile, Senator Manny Pacquiao says the endorsement of Bongbong Marcos by Kusi's faction is, in his words, a slap on the face. Pacquiao urges members of the ruling party to ignore Kusi's endorsement. The presidential candidate leads the other faction of PDP Laban, along with Senator Coco Pimentel, son and namesake of the party's founder, the late former Senator Aquilino Pimentel Jr. There's a pending petition before the Commission on Elections to declare Pacquiao and his allies as illegitimate members of the ruling party.
Ay, baka nakalimutan ni Jose na ang PDP, nabuo yung PDP against sa Marcos regime. Baka nakalimutan lang niya at lahat ng mga membro ng PDP, wag po nating sundin si Jose. Sa akin lang, yung PDP Laban na yan, nabuo yan para sa against Marcos, tapos sa sasapi kay Marcos. Ano yan, parang isang sampal sa mga membro ng PDP.
Pacquiao visited Muntinlupa today to hold a dialogue with senior citizens and supporters. Tomorrow, he's campaigning in Isabela, which is part of the Solid North claimed by Bongbong Marcos as his bailiwick. The Commission on Elections puts to the test the automated system that will run the May polls. The poll body is avoiding a repeat of the controversial 7-hour glitch in 2019. Elisa Lopez walks us through the process.
A clean run for COMELEC's automated election system 48 days before the Filipino votes. It's a full setup before poll watchdogs, representatives of political parties and media, from filling out test ballots, feeding to vote counting machines or VCMs, transmission and canvassing, or the final counting of votes. 4 machines were deployed on Tuesday, meant for select towns in Cagayan and Iloilo. First, an electoral board member starts the VCM and prints an initial report. It should read 0 votes, meaning there is no preloaded tally in the machine. We were among those tapped as test voters. Using COMELEC's official marking pen, we were tasked to fill out the 30-inch ballot. Voters are reminded not to make unnecessary marks or crumpling the paper as it could lead to spoiled votes. After accomplishing both sides of the ballot, a voter must then feed it to the vote counting machine. After feeding your ballot, a receipt will come out summarizing who you voted for. Upon checking, the receipt matched the names we shaded earlier. A voter won't be allowed to bring home this receipt and must be surrendered before leaving the precinct. The machine allows undervotes but will not count overvotes. For example, 2 shaded circles for president. Election returns were printed and transmission was swift using LAN cables. And shortly after, the tandem of Angelina Jolie and Stephen Curry won as president and vice president. Poll Commissioner George Garcia admits the dry run went well under ideal conditions, but may not be as smooth on the ground on May 9. He adds there won't be a repeat of the 7-hour glitch in 2019 which left the media server idle after polls closed.
Ngayon, masosolve na yon dahil may biglang papasok na isa pang server mula sa transparency at yung server na yan ang magtatanggap ngayon ng pabulto-bulto na result na magbabato ngayon sa media para hindi nabubulunan.
Commissioner Marlon Casquejo is confident of a quick nationwide canvassing.
So we're expecting for the national 7 days, hopefully, makapag-proclaim na tayo ng mga winning senator and party list.
COMELEC hopes such a demonstration will erase doubts about the integrity of the polls. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
How do presidential candidates plan to fight corruption? For one aspirant, those with corruption cases should not be allowed to run for office, while another hopeful wants to strengthen the judiciary system. Anjo Alimadio reports.
Walk the talk. That's the challenge of Vice President Leni Robredo for those promising to eradicate corruption. Robredo on Tuesday took her campaign to Nueva Ecija, where she lost to her rival Bongbong Marcos by 320,000 votes.
Pag sinabi mong ayaw sa korupsyon, hanapan natin ang resibo. E paano naman ayaw sa korupsyon kung hindi nga nagbabayad ng buwis?
Labor leader Leonie de Guzman vows to push for electoral reform to ban corrupt individuals from seeking elective posts. He says those facing corruption cases and are members of political dynasties shouldn't be allowed to run for office.
Ang problema talaga dyan ay yung ating electoral system na pinapayagan na kumandidato yung mga taong akusadong magnanakaw. Yung mga political dynasty na ang purpose lang naman kung bakit kumakandidato ay magpayaman. At isang paraan para yumaman, magnakaw.
Senator Manny Pacquiao wants to create more special courts that will hear cases of corruption. He says there's a need to strengthen the judiciary to ensure these cases don't drag on for years.
Ang judicial system natin dito, talagang kulang sa budget, weak, maraming nasusungulan na, kasi the more na tumagal yung kaso, the more na nagkakaroon ng ariglo. Kailangan talaga ma-expedite ang bawat trial ng kaso dahil para walang negosasyon na mangyayari.
Should he win the presidency, Mayor Isko Moreno says he will sell the massive art and jewelry collection seized from the Marcoses. Moreno made that statement as he pushed for the collection of the unpaid estate taxes of the Marcos family worth a whopping 203 billion pesos. Anjo Alimario, CNN Philippines.
Overseas, Filipino workers face many daunting challenges, from war and other conflicts to countless cases of abuse. How can the next administration help and protect OFWs? Stanley Gahete filed this special report.
Some 1.77 million Filipinos work abroad. 2020 government data show they left their loved ones to chase their dreams and to ensure financial stability for their families. Saudi Arabia is the leading destination of OFWs with 26.6% of the total deployment, followed by the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Hong Kong, Qatar, and Singapore. But each number is a human face that has a story to tell. Journalist Piers Morgan shared his testimony on the heroism of Filipino nurses in the United Kingdom for their dedication in helping COVID-19 patients.
Amazing number of Filipinos work in our NHS and unsung heroes, like so many, but I just want to give them a shout out, helping everybody.
The Philippines is the biggest supplier of nurses worldwide, with over 150,000 Filipino nurses in the US and about 18,500 in the UK. But why do these brave souls choose to work outside country?
Primary reason why I leave Philippines is to earn bigger amount of money. Secondary reason na doon yung to gain more experience in a country wherein they have an advanced technology.
But when asked if he would still opt to work abroad if the same salary is offered here,
Apart from the salary, binibase natin sa benefits na ibinibigay na kumpanya dito.
meanwhile, 15-year primary school teacher Levi Masli left Ukraine and returned to the Philippines last February because of the Russian invasion. But she's now afraid of her future here in the country where there are limited opportunities.
Kala nung iba, porke OFW ka, pag uwi mo, parang dami-dami mong pera. Alam mo yon, yung parang hindi na uubos. Pero hindi ganun, hindi yun ang reality ng OFW.
Philippine authorities have recorded countless cases of abuse among Filipino domestic helpers. Recently, Migrante International and other groups commemorated the 27th death anniversary of Flor Contemplacion, who was executed in Singapore on March 17, 1995. According to Migrante, Contemplacion symbolizes government's decades-long neglect of Filipino migrant workers, most of whom are women.
Ngayon po, na ilang dekada na ang nakalipas nang namatay siya, marami pa po tayong mga migranteng manggagawa, lalo na mga kababaihan nating migrante na namamatay, naaabuso at pinagsasamantalaan sa labas ng bansa.
The recent creation of the Department of Migrant Workers is dubbed as one of the legacies of the Duterte administration. Can it finally resolve the perennial issues facing our overseas workers? Only time will tell. Stanley Gete, CNN Philippines.
Things may be looking up for motorists as oil companies slash pump prices after 11 straight weeks of hikes. And for the rest of the public, we may finally see the end of the COVID-19 health emergency this year. Details next, only here on Newsnight.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back. A sigh of relief for motorists and public utility drivers as oil firms decrease prices at the pump for the first time in almost 3 months. Chrissy Di Matulak reports some of them still want the easy way out to get the promised subsidy from the government.
Gasoline stations in Metro Manila are packed on Tuesday as motorists experience some relief over a slash in pump prices. Motorists say they now have something to look forward to after 11 straight weeks of fuel price increases.
Maraming salamat bumaba ang gasolina kasi kaming nahihirapan. Ay nako, napakaganda, napakalaking tulong para sa ating mga mahihirap, sa ating mga mamayan. Kaya dapat mas ibaba pa nila ng konti pa.
Starting 6 a.m. Tuesday, prices of gasoline decreased by 5.45 pesos per liter, diesel by 11.45 pesos per liter, and kerosene by 8.55 pesos. The adjusted price of diesel this week is 62 pesos from almost 71 pesos last week. Unleaded is currently priced at 65 pesos and 30 centavos from 71 pesos and 75 centavos, and premium gasoline at 66 pesos and 30 centavos from 72 pesos and 75 centavos. The adjustment in prices is good news for public transport drivers who have been contemplating halting operations if increase in pump prices persists. The distribution of fuel subsidy is on its second week, but some drivers claim they have yet to receive the aid as they call on the government to make the process easier for them.
Madaming requirements, hindi namin maano yung requirements eh. Hindi namin ma-provide yung requirements sa dami. Kung ano lang sana, kung rehistro.
Mayroon po yung boss namin, yung operator namin. Eh, hindi pa po namin alam. Baka hindi pa sila nakakuha.
At a House committee hearing this week, the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board says it is coordinating with other agencies for easier distribution, especially for drivers.
We have to find a way na yung concern ng lahat ng mga transport group dito at hindi lang sa Metro Manila at buong bansa na aabot yung subsidiya doon sa bibili ng krudo.
The rollback comes a week after oil companies implemented their heftiest price hikes yet, amid Russia's attack on Ukraine. But the rollback does not offset the previous 11 price hikes. The Energy Department's data show that as of March 15, there has been a net increase of more than 20 pesos per liter for gasoline, more than 30 pesos for diesel, and nearly 25 pesos for kerosene in 2022. Chrissy De Matulak, CNN Philippines.
Malacanang says the Finance Department is studying the source of funding for the additional 300 peso cash aid that the President wants to give poor families to ease the impact of fuel price increases. The President said the previously approved 200 peso monthly allowance is not enough. The Social Welfare Department says it's also coordinating with finance officials.
Sa kasalukuyan, tayo po ay nakikipag-ugnayan sa Department of Finance hinggil dito at habang inaantay nga po natin ang opisyal na kasulatan, pinaghahandaan na rin po ng DSWD yung ating internal guidelines hinggil sa financial assistance upang matiyak po na magiging maayos at mabilis yung ating pamamahagi ng tulong.
For now, it is still unclear as to when the government can release the 500 peso cash aid. Presidential candidate Senator Ping Lacson welcomes the development, saying the initial 200 pesos is, quote, pathetically too little. Lacson suggests tapping unused funds in the national budget for the program. Retailers have jacked up the prices of some vegetables. Our senior correspondent Lois Calderon made the rounds of public markets.
Higher input costs, fertilizers and transport, combined with more frequent rainfall, are driving up food costs. Vegetable retailers have raised the selling price of tomatoes and calamansi. In Quezon City, tomatoes in public markets of Tandangsora and Q-Mart in Cubao sell for 100 to 130 pesos per kilogram, more than twice the 60 pesos a week ago. Calamansi tripled to 120 pesos per kilogram. Both are higher than the prices the Agriculture Department published Tuesday.
Walang nagtanim, lugi ang mga farmers. Ang taas ng mga kasi, patubig, lahat-lahat, yung mga abono.
But other vegetables cost less: eggplant, onion, and imported garlic. Other food prices are stable, including the staple, rice. Rice retailers get their supply from the country's rice basket, Nueva Ecija, Cagayan, and Isabela. They say farmers there have not yet raised the price of grain. But since they have to replenish inventories that are good for the next 2 weeks, the price could change to reflect recent big-time fuel price hikes.
Nagsabi na sa amin yung mga supplier sa amin sa Isabela at saka Nueva Ecija na may posibilidad na tumaas nga yung week. Hindi pa siya ganun kataas ang gasolina natin noon. Ngayon mataas na may karapatan na silang tumaas.
Sa ngayon ma'am, alam po, mababa pa po yung bigas, di pa naman tumaas po. Pero hindi ko alam.
Still, consumers are feeling the pinch.
Lahat mahal. That cannot be denied. Mahal talaga. Pero you have to fit in with your budget.
Kagaya kahapon, namalengke ako. Nakamagkano ako ngayon, mamamalengke ka na naman. Kulang.
Prices are dictated by supply and demand, but the heavyweight in that equation, oil. There may be a price rollback, but retailers still have to haggle with suppliers. That negotiation could be tricky, given that oil is volatile. Lois Calderon, CNN, Philippines.
Damage seen across parts of Ukraine, including Irpin city, northwest of the capital, Kyiv. New satellite images show fires from military strikes in the area and flooding in the Irpin River. The river is critical to the Russian advance on Kyiv as it will help troops take the capital from the west. In the United States, President Joe Biden warning of potential cyber attacks from Russia. He says Russian President Vladimir Putin could employ more severe tactics against Ukraine. Meanwhile, nearly 400 Filipinos have already been evacuated from Ukraine. Now, back here at home, from a revolutionary force during Spanish rule to leading combat operations in conflict-torn areas in the south, the Philippine Army has always been the nation's first line of defense. David Santos will join us live from Taguig City. He tells us how the country's oldest and largest military service marks 125 years of heroism and history today.
From the establishment of the Philippine Revolutionary Army during the Spanish occupation, to the long-drawn war against insurgency and extremism in Mindanao, this museum in Fort Bonifacio highlights the stories of soldiers willing to sacrifice their lives for the country. As it marks its quacentennial this year, the Army in retrospective over the crisis in Europe.
Because if you look at Ukraine, ang mga lumalaban doon ay yung mga mamamayan nila. Their citizens, ordinary citizens, are fighting for their country. This is what we want to develop.
There have been calls to revive citizens training for national defense or even mandate military service. The Defense Department has previously nixed the idea, describing it as a logistical nightmare.
We will have to start slowly. No? We already have an existing reserve force. Yun muna yung palakasin natin.
The Army, like the Navy and the Air Force, is also struggling to build its strength. Among its latest acquisition, artillery assets to improve its firepower mobility. This amid persistent security threats, including potential foreign aggression. In a recent gathering of former Army chiefs, National Security Advisor Hermogenes Esperon stood by the government report of China's illegal incursion in the Sulu Sea in late January. Some reports say China could have been spying on Filipino and American troops training in Palawan. There's now a call in Congress to investigate the incident.
That's why we lodged a diplomatic protest. So we're not taking that lightly.
Now, the Army handed out anniversary packages to its units nationwide consisting of new uniforms, firearms, and vehicles. It is also releasing a one-time anniversary bonus of 3,000 pesos to more than 100,000 personnel. Pia.
Well, David, you're joining us there from the Army's headquarters in Fort Bonifacio. Secretary Delfin Lorenzana, Defense Secretary, speaking during this afternoon's Army Day celebration. His last as Defense Chief, what did he say?
Well, Secretary Lorenzana thanking the Army for what he called their rock-solid support throughout his term in the Defense Department. He cited the Army for having been in the forefront of many security challenges, including the government's response to disasters and the pandemic. Lorenzana, in his speech, also reiterated that the military won't be able to fully comply with the wish of their Commander-in-Chief, President Rodrigo Duterte, to put an end to the close to 5-decade-old insurgency problem. He said it will take a little bit more time to solve it. Now, just to add, Pia, this is the first time since the pandemic that the military held a major in-person event complete with traditional honors and parade of colors, bringing back some semblance of normalcy in the organization. Pia.
David Santos there reporting. The COVID-19 public health emergency status could end this year. That assurance coming from the World Health Organization, which declared a public health emergency of international concern on January 30th, 2020.
The pandemic will take some time to end, but the emergency of COVID-19 could end this year. And what we mean by that is really taking the death and devastation out of COVID. And we can do that now with vaccines, with early diagnosis, with better clinical care. So there will be conditions that will be met where the emergency is over, and that is being discussed through our emergency committee under the international health regulations.
The WHO saying the virus is well on its way to becoming an endemic, but could not say when.
I think what we want people to hear when they hear us speak is a sense of hope and a sense of that this will end. That is something we can say for sure. The problem is we can't say exactly when. But this pandemic will end with our actions. And so what we want to see is everybody really working hard, living their lives, but being careful so that we can get closer to the end of this emergency as well as ending the pandemic.
Well, some good news back here at home for commuters. The MRT offering free rides for one whole month. That begins next week, Monday, March 28, until April 30. President Duterte made the announcement as the government marked the completion of the MRT rehab project this afternoon. We're showing you clips of the president himself taking the train from the Shaw Boulevard station in Mandaluyong City. The 18 billion peso MRT rehab project was launched in 2019. More stories to come. An achievement in planetary science. NASA has already discovered more than 5,000 planets outside our solar system. Find out more after the break.
Of the 4 Army men who died in that controversial
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao, para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Welcome back. In sports, Neil Etheridge is making his much-anticipated return to the Philippine Azkals tomorrow. The Birmingham City player missed stints in the joint FIFA World Cup and Asian Cup qualifiers. But now Etheridge says he's ready to take on a leadership role for the team as they see action in the FAS Tri-Nation Series in Singapore. The Azkals will face Malaysia tomorrow and Singapore on the 29th. On the volleyball court, only one team in the Pool A of the PVL Open Conference remains undefeated. The Signal HD Spikers triumphed over the Choco Mucha Flying Titans 3-1 at the Paco Arena. News now about worlds beyond our own. NASA has found more than 5,000 planets outside our solar system. The milestone was achieved after the U.S. Space Administration added 65 exoplanets to its archive yesterday. Only 4% of all those confirmed are terrestrial or rocky planets like Earth or Mars. And that is it for now. Join me again on Politics as usual, now from 8 to 9 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond headlines.
This program is brought to you by